Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Welcome to the mother of all talk shows, coming to you live from Tehran, capital city of the Islamic Republic of Iran. If you read the newspaper headlines in England today, you'd think that Alastair Campbell had already moved into Downing Street and was readying a new dossier for a new war in the Middle East. But later, Donald Trump made a spectacular U-turn and said that he was cool with Iran retaining its nuclear power industry, only for civilian use. But then the Iranians have no intention of using nuclear power for anything but civil nuclear power. So on the face of it, that matter is now resolved. Cue disappointment in Downing Street. Although some strange happenings continue here. Just in the last hour, as a motorcycle factory went on fire in Iran. And last night, a power plant went on fire in Iran. Somebody somewhere is up to no good. The motorcycle factory is now a smoking ruin, but not as much of a smoking ruin as Keir Starmer's British government. Stay tuned. It is the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Well, it's not looking like war any longer between the United States and Iran. The statement by Donald Trump this afternoon that he was quite content with Iran retaining its civil nuclear industry, on the face of it, brings this crisis to an end because, against my advice, Iran is very clear that it doesn't want to have a nuclear weapon. There's a religious fatwa against nuclear weapons, and it continues to stand. So if Iran isn't going to build a nuclear weapon, and Trump is quite happy with Iran's civil nuclear power potential, that's the end of the crisis, isn't it? Well, you would have thought so, much to the disappointment of the leader writers in England today, who were salivating for war. I've seen this movie before. I've been in the Alastair Campbell, Tony Blair era, when the newspapers were all baying as one, when the television commentators were all baying as one for a new demon, for a new enemy, for a new other. Iran is not at all like what you've been told it is like. Today, I hope we've got some footage of it later, Gayatri and I visited the Armenian Christian cathedral, where a significant number of worshippers were inside the church as if in Armenia or as if in any civilized part of the world where other people's religions are respected and cherished. After the cathedral, we went to the synagogue. Yes, you heard that right. We went to one of 100 working, practicing synagogues in the Islamic Republic of Iran. The synagogue we went to also has a museum of Jewish life attached to it. There was not one single guard, not one guard on the synagogue, because there is no need for any guards on the synagogue. Jewish people here, Christian people here, are cherished and respected members of the community. They are part of a mosaic, which is what Iran is, of multiple faiths, nationalities, ethnicities, and different creeds. Iran is a peaceful place where outside this studio in Tehran, life goes on as normal. Couples walk around. The famous hijab edict seems no longer to exist. Iran is a serene place, a beautiful place, an historic place, the capital of a country which has thousands of years of civilization, unlike some of those who threaten it regularly. Iran was a powerful and global civilizational force when the British were living in the forest and painting their faces blue. And of course, it was a global civilizational force before the United States had been discovered by the European settlers, before the genocide of its original inhabitants, before the importation of tens of millions of slaves into the subcontinent, the United States of America, as it became when it was still a British colony. Iran is a significant place, a civilization that is historically significant and quite different to that which you have been told. If Trump has pulled out of the course of war, which would appear to be true, following his U-turn, as it's being described in the American media, I congratulate him for that. The position I held and hold still is that there's no reason why Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon when Israel and America are threatening it with nuclear weapons. But the Iranians don't buy that. They are absolutely consistent with the religious edict that nuclear weapons are forbidden for religious reasons. So I'm hoping that this will not be the last time that I can broadcast to you from Iran, and that we will not be caught up in a war. But it's not just the leader writers in London that will be disappointed by Donald Trump's U-turn today. The settler state of Benjamin Netanyahu is already busy with petty acts of terrorism. The Iranians never acknowledge that it was Iran what done it, because if they did, they would have to respond. And if they responded, Israel would have its way in dragging the United States into a worldwide conflagration. Because, of course, if a war begins, it will not end in Iran. It will consume the entire Persian Gulf region. It will consume the waterways around the Persian Gulf. It will end the production of oil and gas in the American satrapies around the Persian Gulf. It will destroy and wreck the whole Western economy. It will end industry in Western Europe and in much of North America. So Israel wants Iran to respond to these petty acts of terrorism, blowing up a motorcycle factory, for God's sake, blowing up an ordinary power plant, not a nuclear power plant, an ordinary power plant supplying west of Tehran's electricity. Just last night, the motorcycle factory, just in the last hour. Netanyahu is spitting mad at Donald Trump's refusal so far to be drawn into all-out war with Iran. Because if I can do the sums, and I left school at 16 and went to work on a factory floor, if I know the consequences of all-out war with Iran, you can be sure that in the Oval Office, dwarfish as it often seems at times, especially when they publish White House memes of Donald Trump dressed up as the Pope, how disrespectful was that, when the Vatican's still in mourning and when the conclave hasn't yet sat down to pick his successor. In a period of national mourning, there was Donald Trump on the White House Twitter feed, dressed up, mitre, crook, and all, as the next pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church. But as I quipped on Wednesday, he can't be the Pope because he's an orange man. And if you come from my part of the world, you know that that is a disqualification. The bicycle factory is a smoking ruin, as I said, but not quite as much of a smoking ruin as Keir Starmer's Labour government. The Conservatives lost almost 70% of their council seats that they contested on Thursday in the local council elections in England, but Labour lost 80% of their seats. 80%! If they went into the election with 100 councillors, they had 20 left standing at the end, and many of them won by 1 vote, 5 votes. I hope they ask for a recount because I've got some experience of Labour councils counting election votes. Keir Starmer said in response that he gets it and that he intends to continue in the same direction that he's been travelling in for the last 10 months, but harder and faster. He will have lots of time to reflect and regret that particular turn of phrase. Keir Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister in British political history. Now, there's a lot of contenders for that. There's Liz Truss, who didn't last as long as a lettuce on Lidl's shelf in the greengrocery section. There's Tony Blair himself, who set the world on fire. There's Margaret Thatcher, who destroyed so much of Britain as a society and as an industrial power. There are lots of contenders for the crown of the worst ever British Prime Minister, but Keir Starmer wins it hands down. He is the most universally reviled individual in the whole of the British Isles. Everybody hates him for different reasons, but they all hate him. Some hate him because he was absolutely complicit in the mass murder of women and children and men in occupied Palestine, in Gaza, in Jerusalem, and in the West Bank. There's millions hate him for that reason. There are others, and if you were drawing a Venn diagram, these circles don't all overlap. There are millions who hate him because he's given tens of billions of British public money to the little dictator Zelensky to sniff up his hooter as old age pensioners in Britain shiver through a cold winter without their cold weather payments that were withdrawn by a Labour government. An accusation which, by the way, he used to regularly make. I saw him do it. I saw his lips move. He used to accuse the Conservatives, you're going to take away our old age pensioners' cold weather payments. They didn't, but he did. Keir Starmer has given £13 billion of our money to Zelensky, whilst claiming that he has to cut the pensioners' allowance because we've got a £22 billion black hole. That was a lie. There is no black hole. There is no 22 billion black hole. There's no black hole at all. The only black hole is that which is left by his looting of our country to give away to Ukraine for a war that need never have started, that the British were completely complicit in starting and keeping going and expanding into Russian territory itself. But that's not the end of his crimes. Britain's only oil refinery, yes, that's right, our only oil refinery closed today. We are an oil-producing country without our own oil refinery. I feel particularly strongly about it. It's in my own country of Scotland. It closed today, and the Labour government didn't lift one finger to keep it open. So we are probably the only major oil-producing country in the world that cannot refine our own product. Mind you, the net zero greenery, quackery and wokery of the Keir Starmer government is such that we've actually shut down many of our oil wells, only to buy oil from Norway, which shares the same oil fields as us in the North Sea. Just like we shut down our coal industry, only to import coal all the way from Australia. How green is that? Importing coal, transporting it from down under all the way to Britain to keep what's left of our industry going. He closed our only steel plant. Yes, the country that invented the Industrial Revolution now produces no steel. No oil, no refinery, no steel, but Keir Starmer's forever threatening Russia with war. Work that out. How you can be a military power with virtually no ships. We've got 8 warships at sea right now. That's the whole of the Royal Navy, which once ruled the waves. No steel, no ships, no refinery. We've got neither the money nor the men. By jingo, if we do manage to provoke war with Russia, we'll be wiped out in 24 hours. But that doesn't stop Starmer continuing to mount the provocations. But I could go to domestic as well as international issues. Starmer, who has been deeply complicit in the slaughter in Gaza, is now murdering Yemenis. I've told you this story before. When I was a teenager, 14 years old, when the Beatles were still top of the hit parade, British soldiers were murdering Yemenis in the Crater district in the city of Aden. Last night, Keir Starmer, not as a proxy, not for somebody else, but on your behalf, using your Air Force and your taxes, Keir Starmer murdered a now new and as yet undetermined number of Yemenis. Why? Because Yemen is the only country in the entire world which is insisting on implementing its international legal obligation to do everything it can to stop the genocide in Gaza. That's what they are bombing the poorest country in the world for. That's what they are bombing and killing Yemenis, men, women, and children for, to defend Israel. So on the economic front and on the foreign policy front, Keir Starmer has been found out. Now, the big winner was the national populist right-wing party, Reform, led by Nigel Farage. By some distance, the most popular political leader in the country. For those not in Britain, let me paint a pen portrait of him. He's like Le Pen, he's like the leader of the AfD, he's like Meloni, he's like Georgescu or now Simeon in Romania. He talks the right-wing populist national language. He says he's against globalism. He says he's against the WEF. He used to say he was against NATO, but no longer. He's a big supporter of Keir Starmer's policy towards the Russia-Ukraine war. And like all the others, he's a big supporter of Israel's slaughter of the Palestinians too. So not quite the anti-establishment cove rogue that he pretends to be. But he opposes the taking away of the pensioners' allowance. He opposes the closure of the oil refinery. He stands up for the protection of British steel. He talks the right talk on certain domestic issues. And in particular, he wants everybody to believe that the number one problem in Britain today is the presence of 15% of the population whose faces are a different color to mine. Now, make no mistake, this show, me, my party, the Workers' Party of Britain, we oppose mass immigration because we're the Workers' Party. We stand up for the rights and the standards of living of the working class people who are already in Britain, whatever color they are. We're opposed to mass immigration. And it's obvious that we, like any sentient being, is completely opposed to illegal immigration of hundreds of people every day, almost all of them men, almost all of them young men with no families with them, landing illicitly, illegally on our beaches. We don't believe in open borders. I don't believe in open borders. I never have believed in open borders. Only liberals and Trotskyites, anarchists, and very, very, very rich men believe in open borders because it drives wages down, because it provides a vast pool of reserve labor, a reserve army of labor. We oppose it. But we don't try to pretend that the reason the steel industry closed was because of people with dark faces who arrived on the beach at Dover. We don't try to pretend that the oil refinery closed, that the economy crashed in 2008, that the COVID madness devastated our entire economy and society in 2020, 21, 22. We don't blame people of color. And moreover, we say quite clearly, just because someone has a dark face, it doesn't make them an immigrant. It certainly does not make them an illegal immigrant. And if you foster an atmosphere in the country where all three of these terms become synonymous one with the other, where everyone with a dark face is an immigrant and maybe an illegal immigrant, you're asking for trouble in the society. So we're clear. Whatever color you are, wherever you came from, however you pray, if you're in Britain legally, then you are the equal of each and every other person in our island. And we will not allow an atmosphere to develop where people whose grandfather was an immigrant, was invited to be an immigrant by the British government, by British industry. Enoch Powell used to tour the Caribbean, begging people to emigrate to England because we needed their labor in the factories, on the buses, on the trains, and many other industries. We will not allow the grandson, granddaughter of people who were here legally to be treated as if somehow they were other, as if somehow they were to blame. It wasn't Abdul, who runs the corner shop on your estate, who devastated the British economy. It was people who looked much more like me. It was people who transferred British industry offshore to make a bigger and quicker buck from it. Now, lastly, on Donald Trump. I started out by praising him for the U-turn that he appears to have made. I say appears because with Donald Trump, you never know. CMLA canceled my last announcement. He's perfectly capable of tweeting something completely opposite later this evening. But I started out by congratulating him on apparently U-turning and dramatically reducing the danger of war with Iran. But I've got to tell you that there's a rising tide of opposition to Donald Trump from his own base. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, people who were instrumental in his victory last November are beginning to get thoroughly fed up of Donald Trump putting America second, of Donald Trump's movement putting not America first, but putting Israel first. Many people in the United States, not just the now majority, who don't like Netanyahu's settler apartheid state, but many people in Donald Trump's own ranks themselves are telling Trump, it's time you shook yourself off this peculiar addiction to the mass murderer, Benjamin Netanyahu. Much more of this coming up, and Professor Seyed Marandi himself in studio right after this break. Stay tuned. Always worth hearing. Donald, welcome back to the show.
The thing about democracy, this reminds me of Mr. Winston Churchill. And he's clearly stated, he said, the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with a voter. And we need to just remember some of these things that have been said. Really, to the idea of some people are so, they have cognitive dissonance, they can't remember anything other than Zelensky says we need freedom. Freedom from what? They're destroying that country, and what we need to do is find an agreement. One of the last thing I want to talk about is this idea of diplomatic immunity, and this idea that we can have diplomatic immunity for people to cross borders and enter countries with tons of cash and just handing it out to whoever. This has got to stop, because why would you have diplomatic immunity for a country that is not interested in diplomacy? And this is my rant for today.
Well, let's hope this new era will be different. But George Orwell, in his book, Keep the Aspidistra Flying, Gordon Comstock, who is an advertising agent, he says that advertising is legalized lying. Television and journalism in Britain now is legalized lying. And as Comstock in Orwell's novel sought to demonstrate to his friends, advertising works, propaganda works. Some of us are watching the mother of all talk shows. Many more of us are getting alternative views on social media. We're watching other broadcasters like me, and we're watching even Tucker Carlson, the doyen of the alternative media sphere. But that still leaves the vast majority of people. I do not watch or read or listen to anything at all in the legalized lying business. But there's hundreds of millions of our fellow citizens who are listening and lapping up every single word. And talk about cognitive dissonance, even people who are acutely conscientized to the lies around Gaza are ready to believe the lies around Russia, Ukraine, and even Syria. So we have a long way to go, Donald. Neither you nor I are spring chickens. We're not going to see the promised land, but we may have taken our children an inch or two towards it by the time we shuffle off this mortal coil.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
You are watching a very special edition of the mother of all talk shows, coming to you live from Tehran. And if there's a bit of a jump in the picture from now and then, please be aware that we're working miracles to get this show live to you this evening. We've got a poll, as always. After 100 days, is Trump making America great again? Not sure when it was ever great, but that's what the editor chose as the poll. Is Trump making America great again? At this juncture of 100 days, I recall Camelot and the first 100 days of Jack Kennedy. It felt like Camelot to me then, but I was a very small child at the time. So yes or no is the answer you have to give. And you can do so on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You can answer on my X, on my Twitter feed, on the YouTube community poll, and on the YouTube stream. And amazingly, 19,650 of you have already done so. And it's not looking that great for Donald Trump. So if you're a MAGA supporter, you better get voting on this poll. If you want to call the show, believe it or not, I'm still taking calls, even though I'm very far away in Tehran. It's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in the United Kingdom and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number 0044-203-966-2625. Now, I and you have had the pleasure many times of the company of my first guest this evening, but I never met him until yesterday. And I've got to tell you, he is every bit as lovely in real life as he is on the screen. He is Iran's national treasure, Iran's greatest international asset, though he doesn't like me saying that. So let me introduce for the first time in the studio, Professor Seyed Marandi, the chair of American Studies at the University of Tehran. Professor, I can't tell you how happy I am to see you here in person. Let's start with the apparent U-turn. You've always got to qualify everything that Donald Trump is said to have made today. Well, he did say it because I saw him saying it, but who knows if it will survive the night. But on the face of it, he just solved the crisis between the US and Iran, didn't he?
Well, it depends on whether there's another U-turn. And also in the interview, it seemed as if there was a U-turn in the interview itself.
A U-turn within the interview.
Exactly. Well, first of all, I wanted to welcome you to Iran, your second home.
Thank you.
We do great evil here in the Axis of Evil. We work very hard to satisfy.
You certainly keep us in plenty of material for the show. Yeah.
Well, I'm really grateful that you came here, and it's if you recall, I invited Piersmorgan to come, and he never showed up. And
I'm going to keep the pressure on him.
Yeah,
I've already started it.
It's
excellent. They're waiting for you here. What are you waiting for? Don't you want to see the country you're regularly traducing?
Yes, like he seems to be under the pressure that we have a great leader here, and we're all standing in awe, and we're fearful of criticizing the government. And he has this and he and many others have this very bizarre understanding of
They have a Manichaean approach to all international affairs. You're with us or against us. You're bad or you're good. And it doesn't have anything to do with democracy or any of the things they say it has to do with. It's whether or not you are the official enemy of his state. And usually, the official enemy of his state, the United Kingdom, is really the enemy of the United States.
Exactly.
So back to the United States. Iran doesn't want a nuclear weapon. They've said that many times. I've confirmed it with everyone here. You know my own view. If I was the leader of Iran, I definitely would have had a nuclear weapon long ago. But you don't want one. Indeed, you're religiously precluded from having one. And if it's the case that Trump's only beef with you is a nuclear weapon, what is there to continue to fight about?
Well, you're right. Iran doesn't want a nuclear weapon. There are reasons for that. Iran considers it to be inhumane. Some may say, well, that's just pretense. But during the Iran-Iraq war, when the West was giving Saddam Hussein chemical weapons and the military intelligence to use it, and preventing us from purchasing gas masks, leaders, officials, politicians, the military, different people went to the leader, Imam Khomeini, and said, we want to produce chemical weapons. And he said no. He said it's inhumane and we're not going there. So there's a history here. Another point is that the Iranians believe that if we produce a nuclear weapon, then a lot of these tiny countries, many of them family dictatorships, not really stable necessarily in the long run, they'll want to pursue nuclear weapons. And that would bring about a very dangerous situation. But Iran has said, Dr. Larijani recently came on television, in fact, said if our nuclear installations are bombed, then we are going to change policy. And the fatwa will change because that will become an existential threat to the nation. So there are circumstances in which Iran would produce a weapon, but that would depend on the United States if they attacked. But if the Americans want to be peaceful, there's no reason why Iran would want to produce a weapon. But the problem, George, and I'm sure you know the answer, is not nuclear weapons. it's not human rights, it's not terrorism, it's Israel. The United States holds great contempt for Iran because Iran is the country that supports the Palestinian people. Of course, I would also add Yemen, because Ansarullah and the Yemeni government, they are one, and they represent the people of Yemen. So I would say two governments are supporting the Palestinian people. Because Hezbollah is not the government, even though they are like Ansarullah and Iran. But these two governments, they support the Palestinian people, so they're not tolerated. And any excuse will be used to demonize, to put pressure on people, to hurt the country. Maximum pressure has always been used to target ordinary Iranians, to make them suffer, to make life in this city difficult as well as across the country. It's all about Israel. Everything is about the Israeli regime. So the United States and the West, to put it bluntly, they are trying to harm ordinary Iranians to preserve and protect a racist regime, an ethno-supremacist regime that believes in a chosen people, that believes its others are Amalek. That is how the West views this region, despite all the facade about democracy and human rights and woke culture that, even in Western society, all these different minute groups have to be protected and given special privileges and status. But in our region, this tiny ethno-supremacist regime which are colonizers, can crush, they can bomb Syria day and night, they can destroy Lebanon, they can bring about genocide and the Holocaust in Gaza, and they are protected and they are supported, and we should remain silent and accept this reality.
And that's the reason they're bombing Yemen. Even last night, the British and the Americans bombed Yemen. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that. But aren't there signs, again, with the caveat of U-turns can become double U-turns, 180 degrees, or the Anna Baerbock famous 360 degrees. Everything's possible. But on the face of it, given Trump's statement today, and more importantly maybe, his sacking of Mike Waltz, the erstwhile national security advisor, now promoted, demoted, who knows, as the US ambassador to the United Nations. He was sacked because Trump insiders are openly being quoted in the main newspapers in the US. He was effectively pursuing Israel's policy rather than Donald Trump's. He was working, to quote a prominent Trump insider inside the White House, he was working for a different president, not the president he was supposed to work for. On the face of it, and I've, as you know, long suspected that the Trump-Netanyahu love affair would not last, because Trump does not like, he wants to be the alpha male. And Netanyahu is a rival for that position in the current picture. The sacking of Waltz, the apparent U-turn, aren't there some signs, straws in the wind, that the previous position of Israel first, last, and always might not actually be forever?
I'm sure that it's not forever. I think the world is changing so fast, and the hostility towards the Israeli regime is so entrenched. I just came back from China a couple of days ago, as you know, and I was in 3 different cities, and everyone who I spoke to was saying that people that they know, and in online conversations and in the media, the hostility towards the Israeli regime is very deep now, and very strong. But we've been here before. It's difficult to say, because if you recall, just a while back, I don't know if it was Truth Social, because I'm not a member. I'm not in it, but I think he reposted a clip of where I forget his name, but he said that Netanyahu, the speaker at Oxford or Cambridge, I think it was Cambridge, says that Netanyahu is a dark...
Yes, he did. He retweeted that on Truth Social.
That's right. So, and then literally a few weeks later, he said, I spoke with Netanyahu, and we agree on everything.
On everything.
So, which one is it? Or is it both?
Well, it's CMLA, which once used to stand for Chief Martial Law Administrator, but in Trump's case, it's cancel my last announcement. But he's not the only one. If you look at Pete Hegseth, by all accounts, the Defense Secretary in the US, by all accounts, he and Tulsi Gabbard are fighting within the cabinet against a war for Netanyahu against Iran. And personally, I believe that. And yet, Hegseth himself tweets things which, on the face of it, explode any possibility of a negotiated settlement. Maybe this is their art of the deal. If it is, I would never make a deal with someone who behaved towards me like that, but that's maybe why I'm not in business. The ugly tweet that Hegseth issued towards Iran, basically threatening Iran with annihilation, whilst at the same time negotiating with... How do your negotiators, I know you're not one, but you have in the past been in negotiations on the JCPOA, how do your negotiators cope with the fact that the man they're talking to, apparently in a civilized way, is taking out his phone and threatening you with perdition?
Well, it was Jeffreysachs, by the way, I just remembered. I think that in those negotiations in 2015, as well as the ones 3 years ago, I was a media advisor. I wasn't at the table, but I spoke to the negotiators and asked them what was going on. The problem with Trump, I think, is that even if we do somehow have a deal, despite the fact that he's constantly flip-flopping, and it's not just Iran. So, for example, the Secretary of Defense, he didn't threaten Iran. He said that we're going to, effectively, he said we were going to strike at the time of our own choosing, which is a violation of international law itself. It doesn't help, because it's only going to make the Iranians less trusting and more demanding at the negotiating table for assurances. And but also, even if we somehow do come to an agreement, which is, I don't know if it's possible, because right now Trump had momentum over Ukraine. He could have ended the war early on, and he could have given the concessions that the Russians wanted. He could have ended it. People would have protested. But he had a mandate. He had he'd just come to power. He could have finished it. But now he's sending weapons, and that momentum is gone. On the other hand, he basically, Witkoff on his behalf, imposed a ceasefire. We heard that he read the Riot Act on Saturday to Netanyahu, and things stopped. Then literally days later, after the ceasefire agreement was signed, he goes and says the Palestinians must go, they must be ethnically cleansed, which violated the ceasefire agreement that he imposed. Yeah. Then he gave the green light to the restarting of the genocide. So with regards to the Russians, he never did what he said he was going to do in one day. With regards to the Palestinians, his own agreement he undermined. So the Iranians are looking and saying, well, if getting to an agreement with him is very difficult. And if there is an agreement, what if he does what he did to the Palestinians? And just one morning, we wake up and see on Truth Social, he says, nope, it's not going to work. I don't accept the deal.
Yeah, I mean, we have a saying that such a deal is not worth the paper it's written on, or in many cases, not written on. And I can see the anxiety that people here would have about that. But it also impacts the domestic politics here, doesn't it? I'm more conscious than I was before I arrived that there's many schools of thought in Iran. Piersmorgan thinks that you're all, North Korean style, all marching to one tune. But actually, Iranians have a wide variety of attitudes towards this. And this kind of behavior from the US administration must strengthen the most radical camp. Because if there's no point in negotiating, then you might as well get busy and make yourselves a giant porcupine so that it's very, very punishing for anyone to attack you.
Two things have happened that have really had an impact in Iran, I think, in the last year and a half. One was Gaza. And Gaza, I think, as it continued and as the genocide became worse and as the numbers of murdered children and women and Palestinians in general continued to rise and the images came out, attitudes towards the United States and Iran changed. I see that even among my own students.
Yeah, so you're the chair of American Studies. So
well, I'm not actually anymore. But
okay, your students are following these matters in minute detail.
Yeah. So, I mean, even students who are not very religious, at least in appearances, or they may be very critical. In the past, some of them were liberal, pro-Western, but now they're seeing that this is liberalism where they carry out genocide and they won't stop. And in a way, it's an unprecedented crime because in human history, we've had bigger crimes, but never carried out in front of the global audience, nonstop. Exactly. And justifying it like Western commentators constantly do. So this has, I think, really destroyed the image of the West, even among its staunch supporters, among those so-called liberals. The second is Trump himself, George, because people in Iran don't like him, and they see him, his bombastic language and his
vulgarity.
And his vulgarity. So, in the past, some of my friends, my colleagues who are liberal, would tell me that, well, democracy, what did they say? They say it corrects itself. So he'll be gone after like 4 years and it won't happen again. Well,
he's back.
And he has a bigger mandate. He won all the swing states. He got the popular vote. He's back with a vengeance. And when he wasn't there, the genocide was being carried out under a democratic president. So people now, much more than before, understand the state's position when they say we don't trust the United States. When you speak to people, they say this guy's crazy. And how can you negotiate with someone who's irrational and mad? So I think the debate in Iran has shifted away from in the past, and people are more steadfast. Of course, that there's not a single voice. There's still many, many different voices. But I think those who were saying that we should appease the United States, I think those voices are much weaker than they were before. Even though in the past they were never the majority, but they existed, they were louder. I think they're much more muted today.
And freely expressing their view. This is completely unknown in the West. The Iranian media, particularly the plethora of newspapers, are 100 schools of thought contending really rather vibrantly, far more vibrantly than they do in Britain or in the United States. Let's park the US for a moment. Let's assume that they're not going to start bombing us tonight. Israel today stated that the enormous embarrassment they suffered yesterday of a missile fired from Yemen under total continuous bombardment from the poorest country in the region, from people who who go around with daggers in their belts, penetrated all of the defense systems in Tel Aviv at the international airport and landed on the tarmac of Ben Gurion Airport. So humiliating is this for Netanyahu. He's decided to say it wasn't Yemen at all, it was Iran. We're holding Iran responsible for this, even though there isn't any way that it can be the responsibility of Iran. These people don't have maps. The danger, therefore, is that even if Trump does not attack Iran, Netanyahu will.
A couple of things, I think. One is that even if Trump attacks Iran, George, what can he do? He can bomb a few places, but B-52s are not the safest. They're not the most sophisticated aircraft in the world, and they're not stealth by any means. They could lose pilots, and many can be downed. Iran's air defenses are quite good. And they would have to come all the way from Diego Garcia, because these countries in the Persian Gulf region are not going to allow them to bomb Iran from their facilities. That would be the end of their reign in any of these countries if they did so. But even if the Americans come from Diego Garcia, those bases are all fair game, or all American assets wherever they are in the region. But they would have to come 5,000 kilometers. And then they would also have to have aircraft supporting them. It's not going to be easy. The Russians and the Ukrainians, they've been at war for well over 3 years, and while the Russians are winning, although day and night they're bombing the Ukrainians at all levels, with artillery, with aircraft, with drones, with missiles, they're still there, they're still fighting. So I don't think a few American jets can do much harm, but the Iranian retaliation could actually do much more harm to the Americans, because the Americans are all over the place, and Iran has really sort of like an infinite number of drones and missiles to use. I think the Iranians have over 300 underground bases, which can't be touched, as we've been seeing in Yemen. The Americans haven't been able to destroy those bases. How can they destroy those in Iran? So an American attack would be very limited in scope, and the Iranian response would not be good for the Americans. The Israelis don't have the capacity to strike Iran. They would need the Americans to attack Iran. So if the Israeli regime chose to attack Iran, that would mean that the Americans would be involved. Now, my understanding, and I'm not privy to private intelligence, but my understanding is that the Iranians used True Promise 1 and True Promise 2 to learn about Israeli defenses and its capabilities. And over the past few months, they've been working day and night to prepare themselves for real conflict. And I think that, and we saw just tonight, they showed a new missile, a more advanced missile, that obviously would be used in case of conflict. If the Israelis strike Iran this time around, I think the Iranians will be relentless, and their missiles will be much more, they will hit those targets with much greater accuracy than ever before. It won't be, it's not something that the Israeli regime can win. So I think ultimately it's up to Trump, but it's not something, they cannot defeat Iran. And war with Iran, George, you know this better than anyone else, because you were a key person in the anti-war movement. The Iraq war, they had to bring in 600,000 people alongside their coalition. If they want to fight Iran, they'd have to bring in, 1.5 million people? Do they even have those numbers? Where are they going to bring them? Do they have that money? Who's going to host them? We live in a different world today. Yeah. Iran is not Iraq. The United States is not the United States of 2003. So war is out of the question, that sort of war. At most, they can carry out a few airstrikes, and I think it would not end well for the United States.
Professor Marandi, as always, a tour de force, tour de horizon. Thanks for joining us live in the studio on the mother of all talk shows. Let me take a quick break, and then your calls. Jennifer wants to have her say. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I've had veterans, every generation of males in my family served in every war. My grandfather did 2 tours in Vietnam, and I married a Middle Easterner. My husband is actually, his family is from the Christian Valley of Syria. In going full circle, my grandfather actually died and confirmed Agent Orange exposure during the Vietnam War. And then my understanding now of what Israel was doing in 1967, it really starts to feel a strong resemblance to Vietnam and Ukraine being a distraction war, as all of these other things are going on. So I really just wanted to call in and just tell you how much we appreciate holding faith in the situation. You get to the point that you start to realize that each individual is just going to have to go through some of these experiences to come out stronger on the other side. We are mobilizing, veterans are coming together, speaking out against the war machine. The demolition project in the Middle East is basically occurring from all angles at this point. At one point in Syria,
It is.
It is. It's like a demolition project is occurring from all angles. And really, why do you need Israel when you now have taken control over the land and prime real estate in the Mediterranean for luxury condos? They've cinched up all the oil. One thing that I would like to point out, and I never hear it discussed enough, in my opinion, 9/11 2001 was President Assad's birthday, and we have not passed an audit at the Pentagon since, and American taxpayers are missing trillions of dollars. We have homeless veterans out on the streets, and we're just not going to take this anymore.
What a call. Thanks, Jennifer. You definitely crossed a lot of T's and dotted a lot of I's there. 9/11 hasn't gone away, The secrets and lies about 9/11 will one day be out. It may be years, it may be decades. We don't know when the truths will emerge, but I think we can safely say from history that the truth will out. Jennifer, my salute to you and your family and your determination to carry on the fight. We're not defeated as long as we refuse to accept defeat and declare our intention to continue the struggle.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, as part of our turn to Africa, which is proving remarkably successful, my conversation with Nico House on Burkina Faso, on Captain Ibrahim Traore, now has millions of views, millions of views. We're very glad that we are turning to Africa, and Joseph Okechukwu, please forgive me, Joseph, will be up very shortly. But first I want to take a call from Montreal. Why wouldn't we? Where Rudolph wants to talk about Ukraine. Rudolph, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. What I'd like to say is this tragedy going on in Ukraine and the death and destruction is unnecessary. Russia wants to negotiate without any preconditions. The fact of the matter, Citizen Zelensky said he is afraid that Russia is going to attack them. What Russia could do is just bring Ukraine into BRICS. So BRICS countries don't kill each other. They don't go to war with each other. He would be protected, the people would be protected, and the country could advance, and they will be able to participate in all the work Russia and China and Iran is doing. And the other thing is I like to say, this situation with this oil situation with Trump, the fact of the matter, they can turn oil into 6,000 other products. So the Americans buy oil at $50 or $60, and they make tens of thousands of dollars in the products that oil is being turned into. And the other thing I want to say, I have to admire Iran because they have not attacked any other country in 468 years, and they ended up being attacked by Iraq with the pushing of the United States, and they lost, I don't know how many millions they lost. So I admire. Can any other Western country make that claim that they have not attacked anybody in 468 years? That's it.
No, they definitely, certainly neither your country nor mine could make that claim. Iran has never attacked any other country in 460 years, and yet Iran is constantly under attack, even this evening, albeit a petty terrorist outrage against a motorcycle factory. The threat of all-out war against Iran is pretty hollow, as Professor Marandi just explained. All the logistical reasons why it's a non-starter. So really they're talking about performative bombing of people. None of them are going to invade Iran, a huge country of 90 million people, 90 million people, of whom 99% of the population would resist them every step of the way. I can assure you, I think of that. I'd love to see Ukraine in BRICS. I would love to see Ukraine make a decisive break from the people who brought it ruin. The EU and NATO, nowadays interchangeable, have brought nothing but ruin and suffering to the Ukrainian people. From the very day and hour that, at the behest of the US, Victoria Nuland in situ, and the EU, although Victoria Nuland told them to F off, that F the European Union, she said in a recorded telephone conversation, the US has brought ruin on Ukraine. I would love to see Ukraine and Russia friends again, as once they were, one family again. And under the banner of BRICS, that would be entirely possible and appropriate. But it's not likely. What is more likely is that the British and the European Union, particularly France and Germany, will, whatever Trump decides to do, try and keep this war going as long as possible. And if they do, Russia will take more and more and more of the Ukraine. They will maybe stop at the Dnipro River. They will not stop before taking the entire coastline and liberating Odessa and linking up the new Russian territory, Novorossiya, with the Russian people in Transnistria, a breakaway from Moldova, itself a breakaway from Romania. You see, it gets complicated, especially if the wrong candidate wins the Romanian presidential election in the next few hours. Thanks very much for that call. Give me a chance to read some comments. You can make comments on the live YouTube feed by scanning the QR code right now, and if I can, I'll read your comment out. Leah Jah says, thank you, Gigi, for stating that Iran has the second biggest Jewish community in the world. Many, many people don't know that. They don't know it. 100 synagogues, all of them working with people worshiping inside them. Not a guard on any of them, for no guard is necessary. The Jewish people in Iran are valued and cherished and treasured parts of the community. The Jewish people in Iran have representation in the parliament, in the government, and are treated by every other Iranian as a respected religious minority. Summer of 1970, or what summer that was, I remember it well. says Iran, Persia, is an ancient civilization. The US is a petulant child with guns. And Mario Moraes says, after 100 days, Trump has shown the world that America is the same coin with two sides, that the fly changes, but the manure is just the same. And John O'Brien says, Professor Marandi, I'm delighted to see you with George. It brings joy to my heart seeing you together live in Iran. John, you've no idea how warmly we greeted each other when we met yesterday afternoon, as if we were two old friends that had been separated for years. But in fact, we were meeting for the same time, for the first time. Yusuf Chaka says, Iranian kebabs and chips are magic. You must try them, George. I must try them. I've been eating nothing else but Iranian kebabs and chips. Look, my next guest, I've looked forward to meeting and discussing with for a very long time. His name is Joseph C. Okechukwu. He's a media consultant, a filmmaker, an actor, an author, an activist, and all-round matinee idol. Joseph, welcome to the mother of all talk shows. It's a great pleasure to meet you at last. As I said earlier, we have made something of a turn to Africa. My interview about Captain Traore has gone completely viral on all platforms. I hope that you have seen it, but if not, give us your view, in any case, your take on the importance of Captain Ibrahim Traore and the Sahelian group of presidents with Niger and Mali, and tell me what you think the importance of that for Africa as a whole might be.
So I would thank you first of all for having me, George. Finally, but yeah, I would use the words of one of my brothers who said that Ibrahim Traore is an archetype of revolution, a revolutionary archetype for the 21st century. And I agree and believe that with all my heart. You know, what you see happening in the Sahel is what should have happened in the 50s and 60s, because as far as I'm concerned, what happened in those 50s and 60s when we were told we had independence was basically just charades. It meant nothing because you have a country like France signing something very sinister like the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization with all the 14 French colonies in Africa that implied they had to pay the foreign reserve to Banque de France in Paris, and then 85% of it paid, and they were left with 15%, and then they had to go borrow from their own money at a very high interest rate. And so Africans have always had this feeling of being caged in their own skin. We've always had this feeling of still being colonized because we don't get any benefit of an independent nation, you know, from any African country. And then we started seeing all these truths and being revealed. And then all of a sudden you see an African country that suddenly shows up, you know, in the Sahel. You see people like Ibrahim Traore doing some of those things that you can't find other African countries doing. Ibrahim Traore showed up on the scene and now had the audacity to say, look, we are going to nationalize our oil, our gold mines. We are going to do this and do that and do that. And people are like, whoa, these are the kind of things that get you killed. Okay. And then he's doing it and he's getting away with all these things. And so when General Langley did what he did, because Ibrahim Traore has been there since 2022. But remember that the firestorm you see on social media today started when Langley went there to the Congress, and then he was saying that this guy is using the money he's making from gold to protect himself and not to better the life of the people. And then Africans were like, whoa, we've been here before, deja vu. They called the dog a bad name because they want to kill the dog. So we're not going to stay alive and let this happen again, because this is exactly what played out when they took Muammar Gaddafi out. That's when Africans rose up and said, never, ever, ever again. We would not allow this to happen on the continent of Africa. So in a nutshell, what you see happening in the Sahel is the true reflection of what African independence should look like. Independent nations that actually can decide, okay, how they want their destiny to look, what they want their nation to look like, who they want to go into partnership with, and nobody will be able to tell them, no, you can't do that. No, nothing like right of first refusal or anything. They are totally and completely in charge. So in a nutshell, that's what I think is going on in Burkina Faso and why I believe everybody is right here today to support them.
Well, it's a very beautiful nutshell, if nutshell it be, and a succulent picture that you paint and that I paint and Nico House painted just the other night on the Mother of All Talk Shows. This is a government which has decreed that all education will be free from the kindergarten to the university. This is a country that has nationalized its main mineral assets, its precious minerals, principally gold. And the people who used to own Burkina Faso, foreigners who used to own it, are determined not to let it go quietly, aren't they? And you used a very memorable phrase that this is the kind of thing that gets you killed. Well, it got lots of people killed. It got Thomas Sankara killed. It got Patrice Lumumba killed. It got Chris Hani killed. And therefore the question is, are they going to be able to kill Captain Traore? When I see the crowds outside his presidential headquarters saying, you'll have to kill us first, I'm filled with joy and pride at that. How do you think the rest of Africa feels about that?
Okay, so I'll tell you this, George. It is not, okay, so I love the fact that the crowd gathered around his place and they say, no, you have to kill us before you kill him. But that's not even the protection that Ibrahim has. Okay, that's a good one. And I love it because in the last few weeks, I have been getting some information from sources I trust that a lot of Africans have been trooping into Burkina Faso, asking to be shown what to do to be able to stand and fight alongside Ibrahim Traore. So Burkina Faso is no longer a Sahelian thing. It's not an African revolution movement. That's what you see going on there. But here's why I believe they are not going to succeed this time with Ibrahim Traore. I was explaining this to a South African news network a few days ago. I said, you see, no matter how you feel about your Africanness, we have already been crippled from the start. We are starting from a place of weakness on a race for life. Everybody is about to run, but we are crippled. We're running with one leg, one foot, and the rest of the people have their pair on the mark, ready to go. And then you give a gunshot and we start running on one foot, and the rest are running on the pair. This is what has happened to Africa all along. And I've been saying to people that as much as we want to feel so good about ourselves, as much as it makes for a really good sensual indulgence to think that, yeah, we can stand on our own, you really can't. We need a superpower that can say, I am going to align with you guys, okay? I really have some sort of enmity between me and your real enemy, which is the colonial powers. And if I can align with you, I can help you to decouple from the colonial powers. That has been my prayer for so many years, George. And that happened recently between Russia and the West, because the West kept going to Russia. You remember, of course, I've seen your show and I've talked about this for so many years about what happened between Russia and Ukraine, how that so many people are ignorant of what really went down, how that you told someone, I am not going to move 1 inch east, and then all of a sudden you've taken almost all the countries that were there that belong to that east. And now you expect the guy to be happy when you have come now right to his border, and then you think he's going to be okay. So when Russia saw all of that, Russia already knew and knows that the biggest thing the worst thing you can ever do to the colonial West is to take away the feeding bottle of the Africans, of African wealth from their mouth. And so Russia decided, you know what, maybe this is just time for me to start helping these guys to decouple from the colonial West. And that's exactly what happened. France has been getting our African countries. George, if you have time, I'll tell you this now. There was a news article that came out in 2017 by a German newspaper. According to that news article, they gained access to an information which they published verbatim about 440 billion euros, or maybe 500, was being paid to France every single year by African countries. I'm talking 14 French colonies in Africa. 14 colonies paying this to France every single year. And that's why Jacques Chirac, the former president of France, said, and I quote, he said, "We have to be honest and acknowledge that the big part of the money in our banks comes precisely from the exploitation of the African continent." And in 2008, he followed it up with this. He said, "Without Africa, France will slide down in the rank of a third world power." This is buttressing the fact that without Africa, the colonial West is going to be in a big mess, especially France, which I regard as the worst of all the colonial powers in the world. So when Russia showed up, guess where it started from? It was from the Sahel, one of the French colonies, and that was Mali. And then after Mali, it was Burkina Faso. And then after Burkina Faso, it was Niger. And now let me break it down to the level people can understand. Let me tell you what really happened. So as these things are happening, Russia is providing logistics to make all this transformation happen. The true independence we're having in Africa today is all in the Sahel. And after that, Russia now goes into a security agreement with them. And when you come into a security pact or agreement with Russia, it simply means that when you get attacked, Russia is going to have to do something about that. So whoever is coming to attack you must take into cognizance the fact that Russia is on ground. And so you are attacking them, you are also attacking Russia. And Russia will bring their full military might in response to whatever attack you mete out to these countries. Between 2023 and 2024, Russia sent about 100 boots on ground after sending a bunch of military weapons, hardware, and stuff like that to Burkina Faso. And guess what? When the Kursk incursion, which I call Ukrainian misadventure, that was meant to distract Russia from its mission in Africa, when that happened, Russia had to cut down on the number of troops that were in Burkina Faso and quickly send them to Kursk. And which means that whatever the West did through Ukraine worked by distracting Russia. So they took some of the guys to Kursk to go and fight alongside the North Koreans and the other guys who were fighting to rescue that country and at the or that region. So at the end of the day, they had now fewer troops, Russian troops on ground that are there to protect Ibrahim Traore. That is apart from the guys that are very close to him in his protection. Guess what? At the end of the day, the mission of this troop, 100 troops that Russia sent, was not only just to provide security from terrorism in the country. They were also meant to train the Burkinabe soldiers. So thankfully, a lot of soldiers have been trained in intelligence, in counterintelligence or counterinsurgency and all kinds of stuff. And those ones were able to work with the little contingent that Russia had on ground to be able to foil all the many numerous assassination attempts that I'm pretty sure you must have heard of, George, against this young man. Sure. In the past, this kind of thing never goes on. There's no way you will be an Ibrahim Traore in the 1960s and 70s and 80s and you will still be alive by this time. It is because the game is now being played differently. And so being able to catch him and kill him is going to be an uphill task for the colonial powers that be today.
Well, on Wednesday, I'll be in Moscow, and I'll be at the Victory Parade in Moscow on the 9th. And one of the guests of honor there, with President Xi Jinping, for example, and many others, will be Captain Traore. I hope very much to get the chance to talk to him. I've got to tell you that long ago, I used to frequently be in the frontline states in the fight against apartheid in South Africa, alongside the African National Congress, as was then. And President Putin was also there. He knows Africa. He was on the front line. I have a great picture of him with the hero leader Samora Machel, the leader of the Mozambican liberation movement, Frelimo. I am certain that Putin is more seized than any other Russian leader has ever been about the importance of Africa. One last question, Joseph, if I may. There are many derelict leaders of African countries. Let me just pick the Aunt Sally, the president of Cameroon, who's been the president for 40 years, who is a walking zombie, a corpse, who lives in France, comes back for his rigged elections. The days of that kind of government, if I can call it a government, must be numbered now that Africans can see what a real leader looks like in Captain Traore.
Thank you so much, George, for this question. Brilliant question. And this takes me to why what is happening with Burkina Faso, Traore, and the Sahel is very, very, very critical and very important. You see, there's a psychological dimension. There's a psychological element to this. The psychological element is that if Africans continue to see what Ibrahim Traore is doing, first of all, let's start from Mali. So the psychological element played a lot of roles in what happened in Mali. When Mali broke with the colonial powers, everybody expected that they were going to Assimi Goïta was going to be taken out of the way within just a matter of weeks or 1 month, because this is what we're used to. Psychologically, we have resigned to that fate, and that didn't happen. And so the boldness for Burkina Faso to happen was there, and so Burkina Faso happened. And when that happened and nothing happened, Niger Republic also happened. You see what is going on. Now, let's come to the economic dimension. The economic dimension is that Africans are now beginning to look at what is going on there. These countries, especially Niger, Burkina Faso, we were told were the poorest in the world. All of a sudden, we're hearing and seeing the economic index coming out from these places. They are looking so good. Now, the population in all the other African countries are suddenly going to begin to wonder, why is it that these people with the meager natural resources they have are able to do so much, and you guys are here telling us stories every day, sending pundits to television and radio stations to come and tell us why we should be as poor as we are today? Look, for instance, what the guy you mentioned in Cameroon, 42 years, George, 42 years in power, 42 years. And the French love him so much. In fact, the guy stays in France while elections happen, what they call elections, happen in Cameroon. So he is meant to stay there until he dies, just like Yadema died in power and his son took over. I'm pretty sure they probably have a son, a crackhead son somewhere, who is going to take over from him the moment he dies. This is what the French is showing Africans today. So African country presidents are so uncomfortable as we speak now. This thing that is happening in the Sahel unsettles them greatly. So even they themselves wish for Ibrahim Traore to be defeated more than the colonial powers wish him to be defeated. They are not genuinely in love with what is happening there. It is the African population that are so, completely happy and blown away by what is going on and fully in support of it. Because these presidents, Sahel states are making them look like fools. The Sahel states now is beginning to make them look like liars, because all the lies they've been telling, for instance, look at Ibrahim Traore. Under his presidential initiative on agriculture, do you know what this young man has done? This guy has brought a lot of innovation into agriculture. If you see, he introduced the cotton production. Burkina Faso used to be the biggest cotton producer in the whole of Africa. They went down to number 2. Today, they are racing up to that same number 1 because of the initiative. George, let me tell you, you may not know this, but you need to know this now. Ibrahim Traore has committed to build at least 5,000 kilometers of paved road every year. But guess what? Until the 2022, when he took over power,
Burkina Faso had only 3,600 kilometers of paved road. 3,600 for such a nation with all the wealth, the gold, the cotton, and the everything they have. Only 3,600. This young man is now building 5,000 every year, and he has his nation's population, the youths, engaged in this project. So, in a nutshell, whether a nutshell or no nutshell, let me explain to you in summary. The guys that you call presidents across Africa are very, very scared, because if what is going on in Burkina Faso and the Sahel states in Niger Republic is going to continue, where Ibrahim Traore takes over 2 gold mines and nationalizes them. Gold mine that were supposed to be sold for $300 million, he got for 80 million, nationalized it, and now the wealth is going to now stay with the people rather than go to the corporations and then to all the other colonial powers. If he does that, the same way that Niger has also taken a uranium mine and nationalized it, you see that more money is going to be going into their coffers. And these small countries will suddenly begin to make a nation like Nigeria that claims to be giant look like an ant. This is what they are so scared of, and it is going to happen because we are seeing the result right now. I'm telling you that these guys are very, very, very uncomfortable, and we could care less. All we want is let Africa be free. Let's come into an equal agreement. If you want to have business with me, discuss with me. Look at the guy called Yahya Jammeh, the former president of Gambia. I have a real life video because it's a video I put out in 2019 on my YouTube channel, Joseph Okechukwu. It is called the Gang of 1884. If you look at that video, I have a real life video testimony from Yahya Jammeh talking about why they removed him from power. George, these guys were promising him that the petroleum and all the gold and everything in his country, that they were about to take it over and mine it, and that he was going to be given 5% royalty from it. 5%. And the guy was like, are you crazy? And they told him, Mr. President, you should be happy we are offering you 5%, because there are not more than 3 African countries that actually get more than 3% royalty. And I can tell you Nigeria is probably one of them. You can imagine, how can you have natural resources, minerals, oil, that give you multiples of trillions of dollars, and you give the owner nations only 3%, and 5% is the max. And that's what they offered him. And when he said no, they kicked him out. Qatar today, George, has only natural gas. Natural gas in Qatar is what they've used to turn that place into a living heaven on earth. But in Imo State alone in Nigeria, if you know the amount of gas deposit in Imo State, not the only state, in Imo State, that's apart from oil, which we are 5th largest exporter of. If you know the amount there, you'll be wondering, why are we living the way we are living? It is because of these lopsided, satanic colonial agreements that have left Africa pauperized forever. We have come to a point where something has shifted in the atmosphere. There is a massive shift in consciousness, and it is both historic and generational. So we are taking advantage of it and saying enough is enough. Africa must be for Africa. And if you want to do business, we don't want to exist alone. We don't want to be just only for Africa. There's no way Africa can exist alone. We need partners in the West. We need partners in Europe, in America. But we want to have equal agreement, a gentlemanly partnership that says, you take 40, I take 60 because I'm bringing the hardware and all of this, or you take 30, I take 70, that kind of stuff. And not to be giving us royalties of 0.3 and 0.1 like the wife of the president of Sierra Leone was complaining about the other day. The woman said, look, these people are giving us 0.00001. That's why Sierra Leone is like a dump ground. 0.0001. So you make 1 trillion and the country gets about $100,000 or maybe $1 million out of their natural resources. They have one of the largest deposits of gold in the whole of West Africa. This is the wife of a sitting president saying it, not just Joseph Okechukwu. We have come to that point where things are either done right or they are not done at all. And Africans have had it. They are even ready for war now, as long as they reclaim their stolen sovereignty. Sorry for taking too much of your time.
Joseph, I told them you were a star, and you definitely proved me right. Captain Traore, the threat of a good example. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. That's an interview that will run and run for a long time to come. Stay tuned. It's the mother of all talk shows. big thanks to this week's top donors who visited the new MOATS.tv website. Thank you very much, all of you. And I'm really going to make this point as firmly as I can. Every one of you has to go to MOATS.tv and donate something, even if it is £1, even if it is $1, €1. Nothing comes for free. 2 shows a week cannot be produced for free. We need every person watching to donate at least £1, $1, €1. I can't put it more clearly than that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Okay, so after 100 days, is Trump making America great again? That's what we asked you. 22,313 of you have responded, and it is overwhelmingly the case, except on X, actually. If I tell you the statistics, on Telegram, 10% said yes, Trump has made America great again. But on X, it was 35%. And that's a decent number. On the YouTube community poll, 23%, which is also semi-decent. But on the YouTube stream, only 12% said yes. So I'm afraid, President Trump, so far the jury says no. Now, a big thanks to this week's top donors who visited the MOATS.tv website, as we absolutely need you to do. Bob McPherson, Sue Francis, Sally Hossack, Francois Béchou, and a huge thank you to Donna Ross. All of you, with those generous donations, have made a big, big impact on our financial situation, for which I thank you. And I'm hoping very much that all of you, before or after the end of the show, will go to the website, moats.tv, and make a donation, however small, in whatever currency, but make it, please. On the line from England, Corby, is our old friend Terence. Welcome, Terry. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. It's lovely to see 2 academics talking across the room there. One an activist academic, your good self, and obviously the eminent Professor Marandi. 2 points, one observation to begin with. I hope you're aware of the fact that the British press now is fomenting this Iranian nonsense in Rochdale. They've arrested, apparently, 6 Iranian people who they can't name on some plot that they can't talk about. So be aware of your own area there, Mr. Galloway. I'm sure you are.
I did read it, Terence, and I've got to tell you, I mean, I'm no stranger to Rochdale, and I was their Member of Parliament, albeit briefly. I have never met an Iranian in Rochdale, so how there could be 7 of them to be arrested, I really have no idea. I mean, it may very well be that there is some plot. We'll await further and better particulars, although I'm not sure what kind of plot they could possibly have had in Rochdale. Go on, Terry.
Oh, well, I think that just to open your eyes a bit, there may be a few more Iranians, and they'll make them up as kebab shop owners, or they've sneaked out and they've escaped the custody. Anyway, the second point is Mr. Okechukwu there was fantastic. I've been liaising with a couple of young kids in the Ogun region in Nigeria for years. Oh yeah, he was and is, and I've been liaising with a couple of kids, I can't say who, and they're active in the Ogun region in Nigeria. And I believe that Niger is a start. We may not have an African Union coming about a bit, but I tell you something, the kids are getting restless. They can see how they screwed. And that man is almost like a mad Welshman, the way he was going off, all factual. I really, really enjoyed that. I just hope that it is a movement of organised for African unity. What say you on that count, Mr. Galloway?
Oh, brilliant. Joseph definitely could out-talk even a Welshman, but it was a torrent of fact. and a torrent of wisdom. And I think we're all the better for it. I feel totally refreshed. I don't think I'll see African unity in my lifetime, and I'm not sure you will either, Terence. But I think my children will, because a United States of Africa has so much to commend it. It would provide an ability to negotiate with the world to get a fair price. You talked about Niger there. They produce uranium. They used to get 80 cents a kilogram, 80 cents per kilogram of uranium of such value from France. When they nationalized it, they were able to command 300 euros because that's what France was selling the uranium for. So they knew the world price because France was getting it. 300 euros a kilogram for a vital resource that they paid Niger 80 cents per kilogram for. No African worth their salt is going to settle for that indefinitely. And I think that a spark has been lit in the Sahel that will spread throughout Africa. I'm sure of that. Now, on the podcast front, we're in the top 40 in Norway, in the United Arab Emirates, in Turkey, in South Korea, and Saudi Arabia since Wednesday. That's pretty good going. You can download the MOATS TV podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. And if you want to, you can also listen to it on our website when you go there to leave your donation, moats.tv. And make sure you review it and give it the thumbs up. Let me go to London now, where Hoz wants to talk about Russia. Hoz, I saw your video on this subject. Very impressive. Go ahead. What would you like to say?
Well, I do want to talk about Russia, but I want to talk about Iran first, if I may, George. And what I wanted to say was,
of course,
thank you very much, as an Iranian, for going to Iran. We are, as you can see, and I have spoken to Professor Marandi, we are in the eye of the storm at the moment as Iran. And I think the fact that you've gone there and the fact that you're basically a very famous podcaster, I hope that you're the first of many other people, like the Tucker Carlsons, like the other popular podcasters, so that we can try and bridge the aggravation that's been created in the media about how Iranians are the worst kind of human beings, and for people to realize actually on the other side are just other people like yourselves. They're just people that want to get up, go to work, find a way of being able to provide for their families, and Iranians are not monsters. And so my thanks.
No, very far from it. I mean, I already knew that because I know you and your wonderful mother and your wider family. I already knew that, of course, long ago, even before I met you. But not enough people know it. Not enough people know the beauty of this place, the size, scale of this place, the civilizational importance of this place. But I'm not here alone, Hoz. We're here for a media festival, and Max Blumenthal is here. Pepe Escobar is here. Ireland's Joan of Arc, the wonderful Claire Daly, is here, the former member of the European Parliament, former member of the Irish Parliament. Mick Wallace, former MEP, is here. There are many quite prominent people here for this festival this week. So I hope that we will collectively and individually be able to brush up the appearance of this wonderful place. But go on, Hoz.
Please try and get Piersmorgan to come, because that would be a pivotal one.
I've asked him, I've written to him saying, Professor Marandi invited you, you declined. I'm here to tell you, everybody in Iran wants you to come here. And if you do, and come honestly, you'll have a different point of view about Iran by the time you leave.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to just be very quick on Russia and say that I am absolutely utterly disgusted by the attitude of the West towards basically sidelining the country that ended up fighting the Nazis, that ended up taking the brunt of the damage of the Nazis. 27 million Russians were killed in World War II. 70,000 villages were burnt. 25 million Russians were made homeless. 1,700 towns and cities in Russia were destroyed. There was a siege of Leningrad of 872 days. 1 million Russians died. They starved to death and ended up cannibalizing the people who were dead. That's what the Russians went through to make sure that Europe was free. That is what the Russians did. And now you have the audacity as the West to try and come up with propaganda and brush aside the sacrifice, the extermination levels that they had to suffer. And you're turning around saying they shouldn't be part of this conversation, Victory Day, on the 80th anniversary? It's disgusting, George. I don't know how you feel, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, I feel exactly as you do, and I couldn't have put it better than you just did, very movingly, very powerfully. They're excluding Russia from World War II commemorations. This is the 80th anniversary of a war. I mean, Donald Trump made a statement this week in which he says that America won both world wars. They won the First World War, even though they were only in it about 12 months. They won the Second World War, even though their contribution to the defeat of Hitler was valuable and gallant and noble, but small by comparison with the contribution made by the Red Army of the then USSR. Trump should refrain from these kind of insults, because every single person in Russia today and in the wider former Soviet Union lost somebody in that war. And many of them will be on the streets this week with the photographs, the portraits of their grandparents and parents who gave their lives in that war. 27 million of them, 12 million of them soldiers, and the others civilians in the death and destruction that you tabulated there so well. If not for Russia, you and I would be speaking tonight in German. That's the truth of it. Except we wouldn't be speaking, because there would be no freedom at all. And for a variety of reasons, both you and I would be at best in a concentration camp and at worst incinerated and dead. Thank you, Hoz in London, for that. Some more comments. A concerned patriot says, wow, France is over. According to Joseph, if African countries take back control of their resources, Ibrahim Traore has launched a peaceful new way forward. Gaddafi's spirit is back. And Antonio Osho says General Michael Langley is a slave in uniform and a traitor to the black population. And Zagreus Ascension says, and look how quickly China develops infrastructure in Africa. And we've been there forever. We just use and abuse. Beautifully said. Christina Hines says, good to see Africa standing up against those who exploit it. It's time the public had a better share of the wealth they create. And Sam As I Am says, let's pray for Traore. Imagine how desperate the psychopaths of the West are to eliminate him. I put out a public call for an international brigade from all over the world to go and stand in front of Traore's presidential headquarters. And he hasn't replied yet. I hope he doesn't need it. But if he does, I am ready. Now, Gayatri and I went to a church earlier, as I told you. Here's some VT of it. Watch this.
We're at the St. Cathedral.
It's a little known fact that in Iran there are so many Christian churches, and for that matter, synagogues. The Armenian cathedral here, Cathedral of St. Sarkis, is a thing of rare beauty and serenity. And inside, unfortunately, we can't film inside. There are many worshippers there quietly going about their religious obligations. It is quite different from the picture that is painted of Iran in Western countries. The Jewish community, for example, here in Iran, is the biggest Jewish community anywhere in this part of the world. There are millions of Jews who are represented in the parliament, who are represented in the government, and highly valued and cherished by their fellow citizens. Iran is made up of many different cultures, ethnicities, languages, and religions, and it is a place, if it was left alone, of real beauty, and people should get to know it better. Gayatri is in the studio with the social media roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, wasn't that very impressive?
Yeah.
And so, well, as you said, we know that Iran is much more than people think. There's more beyond it, and there's totally lots more. There are hundreds and hundreds of churches throughout Iran, and many of them are thousands, more than 1,000 years old.
And the food's fantastic, especially the chips, as you're about to find out right after the show. I hope the chip shops are still open. It's very late here.
So as you said, we are here for the Soap Festival. It's the International Soap Media Festival. It's only the third one, but it's growing and growing every year, attracting international guests from all over, from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America. You mentioned a few of them. Glenn Deason came all the way from Norway.
Glenn's here from Norway, good.
So that's wonderful. And
Ivan Lapotnik is also here, the great filmmaker.
Yes. So we have just so it's basically a festival of new releases of documentaries, social media workshops, everything media related. But it's actually not weird for it to happen in Tehran because the Iranians are such a cultured nation.
They're a master of film.
They're master of film, but art in general. You would think that in Iran, and I was expecting, there would be a lot of murals and statues and dedication to the revolution, really, the resistance. But actually, having been around town, there's actually more dedication for the history of arts of these people in Iran. Statues of poets and poetry is much celebrated here amongst the Iranians. So they have the Tehran Literature Festival. These are all. It's a highly cultured nation. So I'm very glad. It was a
highly cultured nation when we were living in caves.
Exactly.
I can't speak for your people, but my people were living in caves.
So, Horst was just on the line, was very, very nice phone call. But I just wanted to read out his message because it's so nice. He says, 2 of my favorite human beings at long last meet each other to the great philosophical minds of our times. I'm so glad to say that both friends of mine, one is my boss and the other is one of the nation's favorite sons. And Professor Marandi is indeed one of Iran's favorite sons.
Absolute treasure, a national treasure.
Yeah, and isn't he, as you said, gentle and kind and sophisticated and highly intelligent in real life as he is, has been online. So we're marking the 100 days of Trump for his second term. Is he making America great again? Positive Possum says, for many, Trump is like a visit to the dentist. You know it's required and it's unpleasant, but you go because you have a toothache. So America will be better for it in the end. No one will ever thank the dentist or send him a Christmas card. One way to look at it. Matilda Reali says, what they don't understand is that the point of no return for the USA has been reached long ago, actually, already. It would be a miracle if Trump and his musketeers would make it possible again. Great. I think that they're internally doing, what are they doing internally is about 20 years late, and what Trump is manufacturing with Ukraine is a betrayal against Russia. Trump flies too high, and if you fly too high, then your wings will burn. And Gary Masters says, well...
Don't you think he speaks too much? I mean, Trump would be far better off speaking only once a day. Most world leaders don't speak once a day. But if he would restrict it to once a day, I think everybody would be better off. He's talking all the time. And he forgets what he said the last time he talked. Yeah. And he'll talk to anyone. On the plane, in the White House, in the street. And he's not consistent. And so you never actually know if you can rely on what it is he's saying.
Correct, yeah. And some of them, not so much lies, but because he talks so much, he just can't remember it, right? So he just contradicts himself, sometimes within one press conference. Yeah. He would be better off speaking less and just doing more. Trump, did you get that? He is
I know you're watching, Donald. Fellow Scotsman.
Fellow Scotsman and all that. Gary Masters says, Trump is losing everywhere, but the U.S. empire fades away. He's likely to do anything to maintain U.S. hegemony. He has adopted Project 2025 policy, and China is well and truly in his crosshairs. Don't be surprised if they do a Japan World War II style naval blockade of its ships. It's very dangerous.
A blockade of China? That wouldn't last 15 minutes, let me tell you. China could shoot every American aircraft carrier into Davy Jones's locker faster than you could say Jack Robinson. Believe me.
Finally, can I just remind everyone of the fantastic Victory Day commemoration that we will have in London.
Yes, Saturday, isn't it?
Saturday, the 10th of May at the Bolivar Hall in Fitzrovia, central London. We're going to have speakers.
Yeah, lots of tube stations nearby. It's very easy to get to. I'm not sure how many tickets are left, though.
I know, because lots of speakers have confirmed from the embassies
yeah, it's going to be a real multinational affair.
Yes, and it's really a big event.
Unfortunately, the British government will not be represented.
Oh, what a pity. But it takes place in Britain, so we will be there.
So what time is it? Remind us.
What time is it?
What time does it begin?
Noon. The doors open at noon for a 1 p.m. start
at
until...
the Bolivar Hall, that's the Venezuelan hall there, quite appropriately, in Fitzrovia. Very beautiful part of London. If you can be there or be square. But get your tickets pretty rapido.
Yes.
Well, look, I've got a legend on the line. So you get ready for our outing for some chips. It's very late here. And I want to thank the people who've helped us get this show on the air tonight. They're working way, way, way beyond the normal working hours here in Iran. But there's a legend on the line. It's Erobos in New York. Erobos, the last caller on the live show from Tehran. That's special. Go ahead.
Greetings and salutations to you, Mr. G, your family, the beautiful MOATS audience, and the wonderful Mrs. Gayatri Galloway in her gown, mellow yellow that matches the night, the gown of the night of Tehran. Great guess.
You remember Donovan.
Guess.
She doesn't remember Donovan. She's too young to know Donovan. He had a great song called Mellow Yellow.
Yes, well, you know, she could check it out as y'all are munching on Iran's finest delicatessen chips there. The guest, fantastic, beautiful man, Mr. Professor Marandi, great intellect. the hyper Joseph from Africa, you know, he definitely put a fire under all of us, you know, and the things he was saying. Before I proceed, I wanted to speak about the Workers' Party, but I wanted to remind you, as we've both been overcome by events, personally, socially, and even politically. But on March 26, I responded to an email about a request to do the great Paul Robeson, some audio that I did and video. I still have it. So I don't know if you were still interested in that. However,
I'm very interested, but I didn't actually receive it. It wasn't attached to the email that I got. Please send it again, Erobos. I very much want to hear you singing in the shower as Paul Robeson in character. He was our very first hero, if you recall, in our Hall of Fame. Number 1 was Paul Robeson. And I think this performance by you could put you in the Hall of Fame too. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, not sorry at all. He's a fellow Aries like me, except I'm an April Fool and he was not. So we do have some characteristics in common, if I'd be so kind to myself. However, I wanted to take the time to again highlight and uplift the Workers' Party and the thousands of people who are there, because power, despite not having anything to do with morality or philosophy, ideology and all the whimsical dreams and capricious wants and desires of people, power is what this is all about. This is why Donald Trump made a meme about himself, or a 3D AI meme about himself, about the Pope, because he's all about power. And power, he only respects people that he sees that have power. So the Workers' Party is a rare instance of power with morality, of true leadership as opposed to leadership. And, I'm very honored to live in a time that there is an example in the Western Hemisphere for us, in the form of what you're doing and the thousands of people who are involved, because people are not going to understand that until it's way too late, until something catastrophic happens. And I'll just finish by saying unity on the African continent is the same as unity in the human race. It'll take great catastrophe, a massive crisis, as you see it with Hurricane Katrina. It forces people to come together to unify. But it's good that it's great that the Workers' Party is there as an example, a beacon for the Western world and for the world. Period. That's the greatest accomplishment I've seen in my lifetime, and it's building and it's growing. And more power to the Workers' Party. More power to George Galloway.
Well, God bless you for that, Erebus. You always move me and uplift me, and we're always grateful for your salutations, your wisdom, and your basso profundo voice, which definitely sounds like it would do a good Paul Robeson imitation to me. The Workers' Party of Britain stands for the workers in Britain, for the pensioners who are no longer able to work, for the children who have not yet entered the world of work. We believe that without workers, there is no wealth. Everything in the world that is extracted or manufactured, everything in the world that is offered and given as a service is given by workers. Now, it became the habit in the United States to call workers middle class. We don't care whether you call them workers or middle class, or what the barriers between these two fictional, notional segments of the population are. We define workers very simply. Anyone who depends upon their labor to live is a worker, or if they're old, as a former worker, or if they're young, as a future worker. Anyone who is one salary check, one pay packet away from hard times, and two salary checks, two pay packets away from absolute penury and utter personal devastation, familial devastation, is a worker. And when you put it like that, I ask all of our viewers to just think about that for a moment. If you had no salary this month and no salary next month, would you be devastated? Or do you have a share portfolio that you could sell and live on? Do you own land that you gain rent from other people? Do you have the chance to live off the earnings of others? If the answer to that is no, you are one of us. You are a worker. If you depend on your labor to live, you are a worker. You can kid yourself on that you wear a white collar, so you're middle class, or you work not by your hand, but by your brain. But that's still a worker from our perspective and our party's perspective. So people use phrases like the 1%. It's not 1%. But it's no more than 10%. It might not even be more than 5% who don't depend on their labor to live. But let's call it 10%. That means 90% of the people watching this are, in our definition and categorization, as workers. I hope you'll join us. At least that you will follow us. At least that you will give consideration to the politics that we represent. Well, thanks very much to everyone that made this show possible tonight, particularly the workers who stayed up very, very late to make sure this show reached you. And thanks to every one of you for watching. And come back, if you will, on Sunday on Wednesday. I keep getting my Wednesdays, Sundays. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.